Welcome everyone to my latest video. We're here at the Toronto Indy sketching spectators along Lakeshore Boulevard. I found a nice comfortable place to sit and sketch and paint on location today. So to start, I'm picking a basic unit you can see in yellow on the image to the upper right, and then I'm using that basic unit, translating it to the sketchbook page. You can see that twig is what I'm using as the basic unit, and I'm using it to measure out the drawing and compose the image on my sketchbook. I then go through and add in pencil construction lines showing the main elements of the drawing. In this case, it had a lot to do with the fence and the barriers of the racetrack, as well as street lights. And I try to keep the information as light as possible, but have that underlying structure, so that when I go in pen and I start sketching people, I'm able to look at them in the scene and then pick out elements that are also on my page. So for example, this man's head, I knew from looking he was level with the top of one of the fences. I'm then able to, because I have that fence on my page, put him in the scene at the right proportions and have it feel like he's in the space. And so that's what I'm doing now in pen, is adding a lot of these spectators that I didn't necessarily draw in pencil. Some of them I did put in notionally, just as I was laying out the structure of the sketch. But I like the freedom to add detail, just based on, looking at the scene carefully and assessing what's around the person. I find as you add more detail, there's a lot more ability to measure things out just by eye. And so I can assess where these people's heads are based on how close they are to the fence. The fence again is in my drawing, and so I'm able to just add them in. And I find this part of drawing, really paying attention to what you're seeing, the most relaxing part. I could get totally engrossed into just looking at things. And nothing is perfect. I'm not necessarily perfectly satisfied with all of the people that I'm sketching here, but I enjoy the process and seeing the progression. And that's partly why I'm sharing, is to show that progression to myself, but then it seems like some people are interested in following along too. So I've mixed up 4 very light colors for my initial washes. There's a beigey color for the stone of the structures in the background. I have a light green for the foliage, and then I have a gray tone for the track and the road, and then a very light blue for the sky. So I'm just adding those in now as the base step. I will say I'm new to picking and mixing colors, and I find it challenging sometimes to know which colors to use. Sometimes I use my right side of the brain, for lack of a better word, and if I see a piece of road, I'll say it must be gray or black, because that's what my rational brain tells me. Again, with water and sky, it's blue, because that's what it's supposed to be, and I'm not able to sort of pinpoint and see, if you will, with the left side of my brain. I might have got my hemispheres mixed up there. I'm referencing a book that I read long ago about drawing on the right side of the brain, and it's the difference between your analytical side and then the more intuitive side of the brain. It's why you can often, if you're trying to copy an image and you flip it upside down so that your analytical brain isn't thinking, you're often better able to draw what you're just observing with the more intuitive side of the brain. So what I meant by that is my analytical side of the brain, I think I've developed a way of seeing shapes that rely on the intuitive side of the brain, but color, I'm still maybe the analytical side of the brain and not yet seeing what's actually there. Now, around this time, I'd been sketching for about an hour, maybe even a bit longer, and the race cars were at this point going around full speed, full throttle, and it was not nearly as relaxing as I might have imagined. So this is where I got to on location, and I decided to pack up because I was getting frustrated, in part with how the sketch was turning out. So I did a very quick thumbnail sketch to understand what I wanted to achieve, and it was kind of having this layered effect. There were spectators in the shade, and then there was a portion of the middle of the drawing, say, that was in the sun, and then behind was the background. And so I wanted to try to bring that forward more. So you'll see in this, working through the drawing at home, I try to really clarify what's in shadow, what's in highlight, and I think by the end I got somewhere where I was relatively happy. So I'm mixing up now some darker tones for the background foliage, just to push it further into the background. One of the maybe unintended consequences of now making YouTube videos is that I'm watching more videos on sketching and watercolor. So if anybody has some good suggestions for how to sketch and paint trees, please let me know, because I'd love to check them out. I find I'm lost every time I try to sketch, or I'd rather paint trees. And so now I'm going in, punching out, pulling some harsher shadows and outlines that I want to help pop some of these people forward from the background. It helps me kind of clarify things during the midpoint of the painting when things are sort of most muddy. And at this stage, I'm really just adding details now to try to finalize the image. So pulling through some of the colors on the fence and then pulling out some of the shadows in the middle to foreground of the image. And I am still experimenting with little paint marks and splashes. I find there's an energy that I want to add to the drawings that I don't get organically. So still working through how to incorporate that, and maybe it's working a little looser with the Micron pens and adding some of the splotches at the beginning, but still working through finding the style that I want. And in the end, I was relatively happy with this sketch, how it turned out. It doesn't quite match what I had in my mind, but it's getting closer the more sketches I do. And actually, you'll see at the very end, I take a video sort of walking through the image, and I find that seeing this in video form, panning through the sketch, really sort of brings it to life. So I was happy with how that turns out. So stay tuned, it'll almost be revealed shortly. And now I have kind of a brush pen that's too big to work with from the start, but just adding some variations to the line weights. And if you're watching to this point, thank you so much. I'd really appreciate if you've subscribed, and if you could give this a thumbs up. It really helps my little channel grow. I never expected to have grown to this point, so I'm sort of humbled and very grateful to be undertaking this journey. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll leave you with the little video pan of the sketch at the end.